I don't think people nowadays want to go to restaurants and just simply sit down and just have a traditional three-course meal. I think people today use restaurants as sort of like a social environment where they go, where they meet their friends and have a bit of a chat. In the old days, people used to go to pubs, but most of the pubs today aren't what they used to be. Nowadays, the lines between restaurant and bars is actually blurred. We designed Chin Chin in such a way that about 40% of the space is actually bar stools. So basically people actually eat at the bar as well as sit down at traditional tables. In the old days, people had a different lifestyle, so it was much more structured, and whereas what's happened today is that our cities have changed. I feel that Melbourne and Sydney have become more like New York or Hong Kong or Tokyo for that matter. In fact, I lived in Tokyo and spent a lot of time in New York, and Melbourne's becoming like a large cosmopolitan city.
My original intention was to bring restaurant quality food into a pub environment. That was my original goal when I first got involved in pubs. The market's very much gone that way. It's very much become a casual dining environment. The sort of formality of the old restaurant world is declining. You know, we tried it again recently and it wasn't received as well as our other offers, and it was a pretty strong message from the market that casual dining is where it's at and where it's going to go further into the future. I just can't see how the old restaurant model is going to survive.
It's always been an ambition of ours to make sure that people have a proper end-to-end experience. So we put a lot of effort into making sure the wine list and the beverage cocktail list suits the type of food that we have and the type of demographic that we're catering to. At the time that we launched, we decided to just focus on Australian winemakers. And we even went to the extent that we actually named the winemaker in our wine list. Winemakers are becoming like chefs, you know, they're becoming celebrities in their own right. So we thought it was logical to add that extra level of information.
I think it was always a matter of time. I think our interest in food over the last 5 years here in Australia has grown significantly. It was then just a matter of time before people got enthusiastic about wine and tried to put the two together. And so I think, you know, food has its heroes and so does wine. So it's a natural thing for consumers to look for those heroes in wine. And you read about a certain winemaker who's doing something slightly, you know, differently to the way it's been done for decades before, and you gravitate to that. I think, you know, you taste wine, you get excited about not only the story but perhaps the person that made it.
The general incentive to pour wine is you get a percentage discount, and honestly I think that devalues the absolute quality of the wine. But I'm forced, if I'm putting a list together, I have to always ask, well, what's the pouring discount to get that, whatever the price is. But I'd like to see high quality wines retain their value, and maybe instead of discounts that they get stock replacements, that they get, the staff get to actually visit the winery, get to go and taste wines at the winery, see the dirt where the grapevines are grown in, and really get a feel of that place. I work on both sides of the fence, and I've taken restaurant customers to wineries, and you get a total commitment from a restaurant.
They have to love it. It's pretty simple, you know. And it shows in anything. You can't sell something if you don't believe in it. Winemakers that are accessible to the restaurant is the key. To have a strong relationship from a representative that is committed to the relationship between the portfolio and the business is great. But if people want to sell wine, they need to see the winemaker. No one can sell it as good as they can. And you know, if it's the sense of offering information, being seen in the venue, maybe having an understanding of what your venue is, what your cuisine is, that opens dialogue a lot easier than just looking at a producer in a booklet or a PDF form.
If you're trying to get a wine onto a list, it's always best to not only let the sommelier taste it and try it, but also let the staff taste it and try it. I think, I mean, you're not always going to be able to do that because the sommelier won't let, you know, is the gatekeeper effectively. So I think first of all you have to win over the sommelier, and then if you can get the wine onto the list, is encourage some tastings and some training attached to that particular wine. I always like to tell quirky stories about a particular wine. For example, Winston Churchill's champagne and the shape of the bottle and all these sorts of things, and you know, there's all sorts of stories about Cristal and Tsars of Russia and all these sorts of bizarre things that you can attach to a wine, and quite often just the history of the vineyard is enough.
Our house wines are made by Tom Carson, who is a prominent winemaker. And the reason why we got Tom involved is that we didn't want to really just put a house wine and have a generic wine. We actually wanted to add some integrity into our wines by the glass. So we still wanted to make them affordable, but we wanted to make our wines of a high quality, and we wanted to put a prominent winemaker behind them, so that people thought they weren't being taken advantage of. So people can actually understand, hey, not only is it cheap, but cheap doesn't mean it has to be bad. So we've been able to actually introduce a philosophy right throughout all the restaurants where we can make it something accessible, but we can still maintain a very high quality.
There's only so many different steps you can take, so the background story becomes far more important, and that provides the wine with a bit of soul.
As a rule of thumb, it can almost evenly be divided 3 ways: beer, wine and spirits. And most of my venues you'll find, you know, plus or minus 10%, it'll be 33, 33 and 33. I think the biggest loser is beer. The beer market is declining year on year, and I think that's got to do with a number of factors. One is the attitudes towards alcohol consumption generally, but also the product of beer. It has a negative connotation around its weight gain, and it's not a healthy drinking product. So you know, the old culture of Aussie beer drinkers is certainly declining. Wine tends to be an evolutionary process in a drinker's life, and we as young people tend to start drinking wine at an early age, but perhaps get more and more sophisticated about our wine choices and understanding and tastes as we get older, and the older we get, the more we sort of, I guess, skew to wine as opposed to other alcoholic products.
I think the role of the modern day sommelier can't be underestimated. I think the importance that role holds, particularly to the next generation of drinkers coming through, is incredible. Once upon a time, I used to think of sommeliers as being sort of stuffy, buttoned up, people with bad comb-overs and bow ties. Now they're incredibly fresh. They're, in terms of the knowledge they've got, the advice. They're many people's link to not only drinking better, but to opening up a world and making particularly the next generation of consumers feel comfortable in the world of wine.
It's the same as when you walk into a retail shop and a shop owner balls straight over to you and tries to pressure clothing retail, and there's an automatic response that you just say, "I'm just looking." That's the same that you will get on the floor. So it's I think for the wine waiter or the sommelier to have that sense of humility and approachability to the table.
You really only get like one opportunity at that, and it's either in a retail environment or it's in a restaurant. And I think if you're new to wine and you come across a sommelier that sort of is guarded and doesn't want to give you the information and uses knowledge as kind of power, then you'll be turned off really quickly. And I think the calibre of sommelier, particularly in Australia, that's out there now is anything but that. And I think by and large they're there to help you drink better, and that's what matters.